everyone, this is Sheila with Successful Women Talk. I want to say thanks for joining me today. We have a very special guest, Gretchen Cawthon. Now, Gretchen has an interesting story that I can't wait to share with you. We kind of grew up very similar, so I love her story. But she is the owner of Girls Can't What, and we'll talk about that. And she also has a graphic design, freelance graphic design and web design business, Time for Design. And in her spare time of being a mom and a wife, she is also a drummer in a Christian band called Four Wall Flight. So help me and welcome Gretchen. Hi there.
Hello.
How are you today?
I'm good.
Awesome. Hey, listen, we're going to start off with a general question that I ask everybody, which is tell us a little bit about your background and how you got started in business.
Okay, well, my background, as you said, very similar to yours as we were talking earlier. I kind of grew up with the whole tomboy mentality. I just wanted to play sports and do a lot of things that were basically male-dominated fields. I wanted to play drums. I wanted to play baseball. We didn't have softball and that sort of thing, so I joined the boys' little league team so that I could play ball. When I got to 6th grade, we didn't have a girls' basketball team at the time, so your only option was to join the boys' team. And the year before I got to 6th grade, one girl had done that. So some other girls tried out the year that I was in 6th grade, and 2 of us made the team. And so then the next year, obviously, we split off into our own sports. But anytime that they said no girls allowed, I was like, well, why not? Or if they wouldn't let the girls play, then I'd be one of the first ones to say, well, I'm going to make it co-ed, and I'm going to play. This is not to be a jerk. I wanted to play, and that was my only opportunity. I grew up in the early 80s, and we just didn't have those opportunities. And Title IX was new, and nobody was really pushing it, so we didn't have girls softball, we didn't have girls soccer, we didn't have a lot of the girls teams that they do now, which is great because I have daughters now, and I love the fact that they can just go and do whatever sports they want and don't have to worry about, well, there's no girls team. They have their own teams, and everything's working out well. But anyway, as I got older, I decided I wanted to take a career in music, and I wanted to pursue that in college. So I went to Millikan University, got my degree in music business, and I, of course, was playing drums at the time, and so went there, and it was pretty much all guys. It was kind of a struggle because, they're all, not all of them were bad, but some of them, with the real egos, and why do we have to put up with the girl, and she's not as good, or she this or that, and which wasn't true, but, they have their own little quirks, and I'd always get stuck with, the guys would get parts like on snare drums and toms and all kinds of the cool parts, and then they'd be like, oh, well, you're a girl, here's the xylophone, or here's the marimba. And I'm like, boring. I mean, yeah, I also majored in piano, so that made sense. I understood the keyboard parts of it, but I wanted to play the drums and the drum set and all that. So anyway, I graduated on with that. I actually had multiple careers with in the radio industry, doing anything from being a DJ to working in the sales departments, and again, I would run into people that would say, well, you're a girl, you can't do this. I was even offered a job at one point to be the program director at a radio station, but they wanted to pay me half the salary of the guy who was leaving that job, and I was like, no, not if you can't pay me the full salary that you were paying him, I don't want the job. That's just crazy. And I mean, it wasn't even, granted I was married at the time, but had that been a single person to take that kind of salary, you wouldn't have survived. That's the kind of stuff that I just, everywhere I went would run into stuff like that. And then I finally decided that I was going to take a job as an entrepreneur. I was working with a guy I knew in town who was also a drummer, and we were going to put this drum business together. And it was basically we didn't have a salary, we weren't getting paid for this. It was a startup, we're trying to put it together. And we went, I don't know, year and a half, 2 years with this, and my ideas were constantly being shot down. When we go to marketing things, conventions and NAMM and all these trade shows, they would all try to push me into the background, and we'll do all the talking. We're the guys. We can. And I offered to do the website for them because I had computer skills. I've always had a computer in my house, grown up with that, know how to program, and obviously that's what I do now. But I told them that I wanted to help with their website. You know, I saw some places where it could use improvement, and that was just the kind of the last straw with that. He was like, well, women don't do programming. He told my husband that. I didn't tell it to my face. He told my husband that, which of course got back to me, and I'm like, really? At that point, just kind of made plans to exit that business, and then I didn't know what I was going to do. But my husband was like, oh, you just need to, you know, find a job you can work at home on your computer. You know, by this time, the internet was big, and all these .coms were sprouting up, and I was like, okay, well, I don't know what I'm going to do, but okay. And so I got online, and I started just learning how to create online businesses, and, you know, what are my options? What can I do? And somebody at some point said, well, maybe you should just like make t-shirts or something. And I'm like, what? I don't know how to make t-shirts. Draw anything online. I don't know how to use a drawing program. I don't even own Photoshop. You know, I don't have any of these tools. And so I just started, one night we got the idea of this whole Girls Can't What. My husband and I were just talking, and I came up with, he came up with Women Can't What. And I was like, oh yeah, that has a nice ring to it. And then we kind of were looking at the market and some ideas, and I woke up one night and I was like, it's Girls Can't What. That's the title of it. That's what it needs to be. And then it started dawning on me that I could take all these life experiences that I had and put them together in this website, and that there are other people out there with the same experiences or similar experiences of where they wanted to do something or have a certain career or be in a certain sport, and they were told no, you know, there's no options for girls, or girls don't do that, or girls aren't able to do that. There's, you know, all the excuses that people give. And so I literally just went to the library and checked out books on web design, web development, because there's so many ways you can build a website, and started looking at the different software packages that were out there. Again, I didn't know how to even draw a cartoon on paper, but I'm a drummer. I wasn't an artist at the time. And so I thought, okay, well, I'll check out some library books on cartoon art while I'm here. And so I took those home, and I started reading and studying. And there's actually a post on my website of my older drawings that I literally did in PowerPoint using the shape tool.
Wow.
They're really hideous, but hey, I started with literally no skills, no nothing, and I just kept at it and learned and read, and I'd get online and I do tutorials that I'd find online. One of my best friends is a graphic designer, so I would ask her, I'm like, hey, what do you think about this? And she was at least honest enough to tell me, well, change this, or, you know, maybe use this color. And so we over time it's progressed, and I've brought it into what it is now. And now what I have is a site called Girls Can't What. And it has all the artwork that I've done, and it's showing girls doing non-traditional things. It'll have girls playing hockey. I'm actually wearing the firefighter design, but it's artwork like that with the inspirational Girls Can't What message on it. It's kind of little attitude and sass, and that's available now on T-shirts and coffee mugs and mouse pads and tote bags and all those gift items that you would find from print-on-demand type stores. And then also on my site, I let people come, and I have a blog, of course, but I also let people share their story. And I get a lot of people that come to my site, and they will identify with what's going on maybe a topic that we're discussing. Maybe they're also wanting to be a firefighter, and so they post a story on the site that says, hey, I'm wanting to be a firefighter, but, you know, my parents are against this idea, blah blah blah. What can I do? And the readers jump in and offer advice. I also have people who post a story that's kind of like, hey, I've been there, done that, and I did it, and this is my story. And those are super inspirational, because I've got articles from celebrities on there, women who are race car drivers, Olympic athletes, and then I've got stories from people who aren't so famous, but have really good stories to share with us about things that they've done that at one point they were told they couldn't do.
I love that. So let me ask you this: how have you? Okay, so you've built that brand up. How do people find you? I mean, is your customer base a younger base, or is it kind of a differentiation over ages? What do you normally see?
It's really a mix, because everything's pretty much PG.
Good.
Possible. I mean, it's a feminist type site, so you can get into all kinds of stuff that maybe the younger girls it's not appropriate for them, but I try to keep it as PG as possible. And the site is girlscan'twhat.com. And the other thing I wanted to mention was 20% of all the sales go to help women in other countries through the Kiva micro-lending program.
Oh, cool.
And what that means is every month when I run my books and figure out how much money I've earned, I take 20% of that and I invest it into Kiva. And then Kiva, I don't know if anybody's familiar with that, but when you donate to them, they turn around and they loan that out to entrepreneurs, which are people in other countries who are trying to do the same thing I'm doing. They're just trying to make their lives better. They're trying to earn a living. They're trying to create their own business. And you're basically loaning money to help them increase their business. And then they pay that money back to you. So I actually get all the money back. But what I do, instead of taking the money back and spending it on myself, I turn around and I find more people to invest it in. And so each month that grows, and each month we're adding more and more people to the portfolio. And I actually have a Girls Can't What team on Kiva, and I have people who are joining in with me, and they're also doing their own loans out to people in other countries. And I'm not trying to just do women. There are men that we support too, but it's mostly the women that need the help. Because it's a lot of single moms out there, and it's a lot of, or even just single women that are just trying to get their start, and they tend to need more help financially. So we usually help the women, but there are groups of people that are also on Kiva, and there are also men that you can help. So it's and you get to go through and actually pick the person out, read their backstory, find out what their specific needs are, what their business is, what their goals are, and a little bit about their family and where they live. So it's a really, really cool program.
I love that. Well, let me ask you this. What I've really found interesting about your story, which I didn't realize, is that you didn't start out as a kid that was always drawing things. So you weren't an artist by trade. You went and decided, okay, I need to start a business, and it's going to be to maybe empower young girls and women. So I'm now going to teach myself web design, I'm going to teach myself all of the illustration type tools and to draw. Mm-hmm. How long did that process take? That's amazing.
Well, the idea for Girls Can't What came about in 2005. So we're now 7 years into the process. I think I really didn't hit my peak in terms of drawing until about probably 2 years into the whole process of it. I actually, where I came about with the whole let's do t-shirts, let's do the mugs and all that stuff was when I go out to a store to purchase stuff, I'm looking for things that reflect what I do. I'm not partial to, I'm going to go buy this shirt because it has somebody's brand name on it that just says, nothing against Nike, but, just something that says Nike, although I am wearing a Nike jacket. Because it's green and my kid's team is green, so it's I have for the game. But I was looking for things that, especially like if I'm looking for a drummer t-shirt, and I go out and I look at a lot of the sites out there that have music t-shirts on them, and I look at, a lot of them are the drum brand names and whatnot, which I understand, but there wasn't anything that really was for girls or for women or even the styles. You get what you get and stuck with are men's t-shirts, and for some of us, that's not real flattering. Like, okay, I really don't like the t-shirt style, or even just getting something small. I'm a smaller person, and when you're buying adult-sized t-shirts, even sometimes the small shirts are a little too baggy or too big on me. So I like the fact that I could go with somebody who, like a CafePress or Zazzle, who has a variety of shirt styles, and then I can put my artwork on there, and then the customer can then pick what style shirt best fits them, what colors they like, and then all they have to do is put the artwork on there and make the purchase. So it really simplifies things.
I like that, and that's kind of where I was going with my next question. Do you do all the printing yourself, or do you use CafePress and Zazzle? How does that work? I
use CafePress and Zazzle. I've looked into having stuff printed, and that is on my to-do list for probably in the next year or two. Since I wasn't sure how big this would get, of course I always want it to be big and huge. I wasn't sure what to start with, like, design-wise, because right now I have close to, I think, 300 different designs. I mean, just some of them are just color variations, but there are a lot of different sports. Is huge. a lot of sports out there. So I'm trying, and there's still a lot of things that I have left to draw. I have a lot of requests from people. I get usually 1 or 2 requests a week for, hey, I want a lawyer, or hey, I want a rollerblader, or this or that. So I've got a long list of stuff still to draw. And I'm shooting to do at least 2 new designs every month. That's been my target goal. So, but yeah, I use Zazzle and CafePress.
How does that work? So, can you just explain that process a little bit? Because I have people ask all the time. Because with my Me Giant business, we do some T-shirts and onesies as well, and we screen print those. So I have people ask all the time about using a service like that, and I don't have a clue. So can you kind of explain to us how you get started with that and how it works?
Yeah. Well, I create the artwork. I use Illustrator and Photoshop both. And once I create my artwork, in their specifications, it has to be a certain size or a certain resolution. And so you create the file. I upload it to, let's say, CafePress. I upload it to CafePress, and I create my section. I choose which products I want that design to be on. And some products require a different type of design or different width or whatnot, because they're not all the same shape, obviously. But then I upload that artwork, and it overlays on the products, and then they basically are showing a picture of their blank product with my picture overlaid on top of it, so that the customer can see what they would get if they purchased it. The customer makes the purchase, CafePress ships it, handles all of the, if they have an exchange or anything, CafePress handles all that, and I just get sent a check at the end of the month that says, hey, you made X amount of dollars on this. And I, of course, choose the markup that I want. So the pricing, I'm not 100% flexible on, but sometimes I can bring the pricing down a little bit better if I think it needs to be a little more reasonable, because sometimes those prices can get really jacked up. But you control the markup, and it can be a percentage or it can be a dollar amount. And then that's pretty much it. CafePress really handles everything else, and Zazzle the same way. They handle the whole process of getting it shipped to the customer and everything, and then you just get a nice little deposit into your PayPal account once a month.
You're basically paying them a percentage for them to do that part of the business. So you're doing the design part, and they're basically handling the other part.
Right. And then I have now my shop. You can have a shop on their sites. You can have it, cafepress.com/girlscan'twhat, or I have zazzle.com/girlscan'twhat. So I have two separate sites there that I manage, and that's where my products are. But then on my main site on Girls Can't What, I actually feed in the Zazzle products there, so that people don't have to constantly be jumping from one site to another to visit my shop. It's all in one location.
So they can shop directly at your site. You can link those up.
Yep.
Yeah, and I was kind of curious because for SEO purposes and things, for that purpose, who's getting that recognition, whether that be you or CafePress and Zazzle?
I put everything on my main domain, and then when I feed those products in, I create individual pages, and I put the SEO in those individual pages, because when you're on a CafePress or a Zazzle domain, whatever they've got going on their top level pages, they're going to beat the heck out of you in the search engine rankings. Your best bet is to go with your own external domain, create the pages that you want, SEO them the way that you want, and then feed the products in. And I've had really good results with that. I have several page one Google rankings for certain keywords and things that I've set up for certain niche products, because I have a lot of, individual sports where I have maybe 10 or 15, like say basketball. I have 10 or 15 different basketball designs. So I have a separate page for that. And then I try to rank for, basketball designs or some keyword around basketball. And
that's interesting.
Yeah.
I have people, I interviewed a lady the other day named Carol Trickett, and she took her hobby of doing stained glass and actually turned it into a business once she was downsized. And someone saying, I owned a wholesale furniture and decor business before I started my current children's line. But people saying, can you really turn stained glass into a business? Can you make money off of it? People say the same thing. Can you really support your family doing T-shirts and selling T-shirts? What would you say to that person that asked a question like that?
I'll say absolutely you can. The main things you have to do is know your market. Obviously there has to be a market for that. And realistically, there's usually a market for everything. You just have to find it. In my case, what works out well is the volume, the amount of things I can put out there. The more designs I can put out there, the better. Because if someone comes to my site and let's say that they're looking for a roller derby design, and I don't have roller derby, I do now, but say I didn't. And they come to my site and that's what they're looking for. If I don't have it, they're going to go away and they're going to buy it from someone else. One thing I noticed is whatever designs I think might be of value isn't necessarily what are the most valuable designs. The customer is the one that provides that value stamp to the product. Because an interesting example was I had somebody at one point ask me for a preacher design, and I'm like, okay, I can see that. So, but I thought, I'll make it. I'm not going to sell a whole lot of it, but I put it on my list, and eventually I got around to it, and I put it out there. It's probably one of my top selling designs, and it surprised me because I didn't think it was as valuable just because I hadn't had very many requests for it, and I usually go by the amount of requests I have for that particular design gets top priority. And I used to think that because here's another interesting example. I got a ton of requests for Marines design. What Marines? We need a Marine. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. So I got around and finally did the Marine design. It took me a little bit longer because there's licensing with the Marines. And finally, CafePress got a Marines license, and I was able to create a Marines design and put it out there. And, I promoted that like crazy, and I emailed all these people back. I got the Marine design. I got the Marine design. I finally did what you guys have been asking me to do. I was all excited. I thought I finally did something great. It doesn't sell very well.
That's typical, isn't it?
Everybody's like, oh, as soon as I posted, oh, that's so cute. I love that. That's great. But not that I don't sell any. It just doesn't sell as much as, say, the Preacher design or, soccer or some of the other more popular ones. But it's very interesting because the customer is the one that actually places that value, not me. And if I'm not putting something out there, if I'm not constantly creating something, then I'm essentially robbing someone else of having that value in their life, because I find certain things, there are certain designs that I think are valuable. I love the drummer design. I have it on a tote bag, a coffee mug, a drinking cup with it on it. That's that was the first one I drew because that was me, the drummer. So, to me, that's very valuable design. And there are a lot of other people who are also drummers who find that one valuable. But if I'm not putting out, say, again, the roller derby design, then I'm robbing somebody out there who's a roller derby person of having something of value that they can relate to and that they understand.
I love that. It's just pretty hard to figure out and keep up. How do you do your market research?
I do a couple of things. I'm constantly watching the news, see what's trending. I know gymnastics would be. I do have a balance beam girl, but I've had people ask me to do some more gymnastic stuff. So with the Olympics, obviously. So I do that. That's one avenue. The other is I have on my contact form an opportunity for people to request a design. And I keep that in a spreadsheet so that I know, number one, who has asked me for that design, how many people have asked for it, and then I just sort it by the number of requests, and then I try to go down the list. Sometimes I get a lot of requests for something that I'm just like the Preacher. I'm just like, what? And I'll do it, and it's good. And then sometimes I get a request where only one person has asked for it, and I thought, well, I'm kind of in the mood to draw that right now. Let's go with it, and it'll turn out to be something super popular, and I'm like, okay, well, I didn't see that one coming. But, a lot of it is just listening to my users and kind of watching the news and see what's trending. And then sometimes it's just I get an idea. I'm out somewhere and I see something, or I'm in a store and I see something and I'm like, ooh, that would make a great Girls Can What design. And on the list it goes.
I love that. Let me ask you this. How do you, so when you blog, a lot of people have trouble with what do I blog about in my business, because I don't want to always talk about myself. So how do you use your blog? How do you blog? What's your schedule? And how do you tie that into not just, hey, this is another design for Girls Can't What, but how does your blog help you with your business?
Right now I'm putting out one post a week because I have a very busy schedule, as we've determined. So I usually set aside time on Tuesdays to write. Tuesday afternoons, and then set up my newsletter. My newsletter goes out on Wednesdays, every Wednesday morning. And it's usually just one featured post, whatever I've written Tuesday or written ahead of time. And as far as topics go, it's kind of twofold. I do a lot of, sometimes the share story submissions. Sometimes I'll get a really, really good one that I think, oh, I really need to share this with my readers. They've, overcome some major obstacle, or it's a hot topic. And so I'll feature one of those instead of actually one of my own articles. A lot of times I write on my own personal experiences, how I've gotten around where people have told me no, or where I've written on occasion about my getting through the radio broadcasting business, of them telling me, well, you can have this job at 50% pay. And so, but I also write about the tips and the resources that I use to get where I'm at. If, for example, how to start and create your website with literally no money. A a lot of times I'm telling people, go to the library, you know, use YouTube, you got Google at your fingertips, you know, that it's so much different. If this would have been, you know, trying to do this in the 70s or the 80s, no, there's no, first of all, it's an internet business. Internet didn't exist, but I mean, but that aside, the amount of resources that we have in front of us, there's absolutely no excuse for not finding out the answers. A lot of what we've been taught in like B school, and I read a lot of books by like all of your major time management gurus, Peter Drucker, Brian Tracy, some of those guys. I read their stuff, and some of the biggest things that they tell us is, I totally lost my train of thought.
I do that from time to time myself.
Yeah, but well, a lot of what they tell us is shoot. You can edit this out, right?
This is because you're busy, see? You're fitting all of these things in, and you're trying to read business books. It makes it a challenge.
But where I was going with that is I take a lot of those types of tips, and they basically tell you to model after someone who is already doing what you're doing or doing something similar, and if you can talk to them or interview them, you know, get some information. And that's going to move you forward a lot faster than if you try to just root around and dig it up on your own, because you're going to have, it's going to be more time consuming, and you're going to run down a lot of rabbit trails that you shouldn't be going down because you don't know what you're doing. So I followed a lot of that advice of asking people who already do Zazzle and CafePress, you know, how did you know, I find people who are doing it and doing it well and making a lot of money at it, and I'm like, okay, you know, do you advertise? Do you do this marketing? How much time do you spend on Facebook and social media? And I ask these questions. And the interesting thing with that is you get a lot of different answers. There's no one right answer. So it really does boil down to what works for you as an individual. But you can also find things that for sure nobody's doing. And then you either have to ask yourself, maybe I should be the one person that does that. Maybe they all know something I know. So down that road. I'm actually, my Zazzle shop is actually set up way different than most people's in terms of how I set up the SEO and how I set up the sections, and I won't get on all the technical ins and outs of it, but the way I've done it was a project I started about 2 years ago, and it was all based on search engine optimization, because the key to my kind of business and actually making a profit with it is volume, because I don't make that much off. If someone buys a t-shirt, I'm lucky if I make $5. You know, it's not a big money maker as far as the markup goes. And of course I want to keep my prices reasonable because I don't want to gouge people, and you know, you don't want to charge people $50 for a t-shirt.
Right.
Under, you know, $20 or less, and so anyway, the key is volume, and so I set my site up so that I could draw in as much traffic to my external domain as possible, because I also get a referral bonus from these companies if I sell it directly myself versus them selling it through their marketplace. So I started this about 2 years ago, and I did some serious research on SEO and Google and setting up my site and using all these feeds to pull in products, and I've come up with a really good system, and I've shared it a few times in the forums with Zazzle and CafePress, and people just kind of look at me sideways like, oh, nobody's doing it. I don't care.
It works for you.
And here I am, you know, 2 years later, and my search traffic is way up. I'm getting, you know, I'm on page 1 of Google for several different keywords that I'm actively targeting, and it's doing really well. It's there's always room for improvement, and of course volume is key, so the more volume the better. But it's a gradual process. It's not an overnight success by any means, especially when you're working with SEO.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Nothing is, right? But I love that. I love your point of, instead of trying to recreate the wheel, go out and see how other people are doing it. Learn from them. I love business books. I read a lot of the same things, and I follow a lot of blogs, and I think it's important because someone else has done it, so I can listen to what they've done, which is another reason why I do this show, so that people can see what you're doing, Gretchen, and go, hey, she did this. I can too, and I can learn from her. So instead of thinking that you can't, you can. And another thing that you touched on that I love is that you ask. You went, if you didn't know, you asked someone. And we as women are sometimes so afraid to ask. So I'm so proud that you shared that.
Yeah, and what's interesting was I was a little afraid to ask because people who make a lot of money in my type of business tend to be very tight-lipped about how they've done it and what they've done. And so when I asked in a couple of forums about it, I actually got a backlash from several people like, you shouldn't ask that, you shouldn't. Whatever. I didn't ask it openly, as in share your responses here in the public forum. I said, here's my email address. If you're interested, please contact me privately. I promised everybody that I talked to, I'm not sharing this information with each other. I'm not, doing anything like that. And everybody was like, okay, as long as you promise not to share my information. And then they were openly answered all of my questions. Everybody that had responded, that I sent out my little survey to, they came back and they answered the questions. And, some of them were, okay, that's the response I expected. And then other ones were like, oh, well, that's I never thought of that. They're doing something different than I am. I just make notes, and that might be something I want to try, or that may be an advertising outlet that I've not thought of yet. So it's given me some ideas, but it's also given me some other ideas of what not to do, which is very important because with my schedule and my life at the moment, I don't have time to waste. Anyway.
To practice. Yeah, practice does make perfect, but sometimes we don't have all that time to practice. I love that you also, a lot of people don't realize it, but somebody that you maybe see as your competitor, they may really not be your competitor when you actually get down and narrow your market down, and you can learn a lot from each other. So that networking and connecting is amazing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Let me ask you this. If this has been terrific. I love that you've been open and shared some of the things that you did, and you've talked to us about your market research and how you use Zazzle and CafePress. I love that you've done that, and the willingness to say you weren't afraid to ask, and you weren't afraid to survey those people. And most of all, you didn't even know what you were doing. You just started out and said, hey, I'm going to do something, and I can. I love that. Girls can.
That's right.
If someone wanted to connect with you, where would be the best place? Where would you want to send them?
The best place would be to come directly to my website, which is girlscan'twhat.com. And I do have social media, Facebook and Twitter and Pinterest and all that stuff. And so if that's your game and you like the social media, you can always find me there. It's always Girls Can't What. That's always my username. That's always in my URL somewhere. So that's what.
We will also link all those up as well.
Okay. Sounds
Gretchen,
good.
This has been terrific. I love what you're doing. More girl power. And thank you again.
Thank you. This is wonderful.
Thanks. Have a good day.
You too.
Bye-bye. Okay, that's our show, and thanks again for tuning in. Hey, I have a huge favor. I'd like for you to join us over at www.successfulwomentalk.com. Join our email list, and on that list, you'll be a VIP. You'll be receiving all of our newest updates, newest interviews, our newsletter, and any tips and tricks we have for organizing your business and getting raving fans and customers that actually just sing your praises. So again, thanks again for tuning in. Check us out next week for another episode of SuccessfulWomenTalk.com. Thanks, guys.